Welcome visitor, my name is Declan and this is 19th part of the WoW Player's Diary. Since its release in 204, World of Warcraft has reigned supreme among MMOs. Its steady growth in subscribers, peaking at 12 million during the Wrath of the Lich King, has motivated other developers and publishers to replicate its success. While not everyone has stated this, it's generally clear that millions of WoW players represented a potential audience for other MMOs. Creating a WoW killer never worked, but several successful MMOs emerged from these attempts. Some, like Warhammer Online, Tabula Rasa and WildStar, have since closed, while others are still alive to varying degrees. Rift, Lord of the Rings, Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online and Star Wars The Old Republic. If you are an MMO fan, they are at least worth checking out. In 211, games like Rift and Star Wars The Old Republic were contenders for the title of WoW Killer. Rift's creators weren't even shy about the advertising slogan, "You are not in Azeroth anymore." As for Star Wars The Old Republic, the pair was being developed by BioWare, a studio at the peak of its form, having released a number of cult titles in 200s. With two successful KOTOR games and multi-million-dollar budget under their belt, they posed a real threat. However, the story of Star Wars The Old Republic and its so-called blow to WoW is yet to come. The game wasn't released until late 211. Rift, however, was released in March 1st, and in my memory it was the first game to dare bark at the elephant. A fish rose from the head. It all started when Ashley, the Decepticons guildmaster, wrote an enthusiastic post on Guild Forum about how great Rift was. And his enthusiasm wasn't without a reason. Firstly, he'd been playing WoW since its release. Secondly, he tried particularly every WoW killer game released in recent years, including Age of Conan, Warhammer Online and Ion. And his opinion, Rift was the best he'd seen in the past few years. The thread became the most discussed place on Guild Forum, and within 10 days 5 more guild members began disappearing to Rift. Their consensus was almost unanimous. Their game was good. This had such a negative impact on the guild that they stopped recruiting. The Decepticons raided 3 evenings, and 2 were called Progress, and the third was supposedly reserved for farming, but getting into this was also problematic. After all, to try the last bosses you need to quickly clear 9 easy bosses in 1 evening. Therefore, newcomers were accepted with great reluctance. On non-raiding evening, the guild chat was quiet, with only 2 or 3 people there, or sometimes even me alone. Everyone's gone to Rift. I decided to talk to Ashley about the future, realized everything was, very unclear, said goodbye and left. There is little that can be done in the world sitting by sea waiting for the weather to change, especially in a guild that's about to join Rift. So, my raiding with Decepticons ended before it really began, although I enjoyed the few runs I had with them. Guys were handy and businesslike. After wipes, for example, they didn't have long conversation. Eat, drink, pull a boss, that's it. Reading reviews from Rift players, it became clear what might have been so appealing about the game. One of the things was spirit of exploration. I recalled my early days in World of Warcraft when I was leveling my main. Well, back then I saw each new level not as a step toward endgame, but as a ticket to a new location. I loved visiting new places, discovering locations and traveling through them. Later, when I'd covered a lot of ground, I wanted to explore hidden locations. I remember sneaking into a village of dancing trolls, which became a village of shooting trolls after Cataclysm. I ran the Winter Spring, then clinging to textures, then jumping on cliffs, several unsuccessful attempts, and finally 2 successful parachute jumps, and I was in a new place. The joy was no less than from a new epic, if not more. I understood the Rift players who were now exploring a new world. It was truly exciting. Maybe that's why people were switching to Rift. All guilds, well, went there. I once came across an article at one of the WoW blogs about some bloggers declaring their platform Rift free, meaning no discussion about the game were allowed there. What's more, even two WoW blogs from Runet Blogoshare became the first platforms dedicated to Rift. The beginning of the Exodus. Yes, Rift was the first MMO I can remember that stole WoW's audience, but by and large it wasn't Rift that was a problem, but rather Cataclysm itself. A significant portion of the developers' efforts went into reworking the old world, even though this content was one-time used. Even with the casual pace, all quests could be completed by a couple of characters in 2-3 months at most. The developers didn't provide any incentive to return and level up a couple more alts. Furthermore, the endgame turned out to be too difficult for casual players, spoiled by the nerfed Icecrown Citadel. I was once surprised to read threads on WoW.com regarding raid difficulty. A member of one casual guild admitted they'd been trying Magmore from Blackwing Lair raid for a month and their best result was 20%. And there were quite a few, if not most, guilds like that. After Decepticons, I joined the Enslaved Guild, a typical casual group, which were plentiful on Moonglade. We were doing well against Magmore, but stuck at Artemides, and we could not kill him. Our best try was 3%. Tier 11 encounters were unforgiving, and people were simply frustrated. I also saw people leaving the Blogoshare. Fellow bloggers were leaving. In this regard, the farewell post by Yael, the Legend Keeper Guildmaster, was interesting. I was particularly surprised by the details of her conversation with one of the game masters. When he asked why she'd cancelled her subscription, she responded with 8 pages of explanation about the depressing crap your Cataclysm was. Fox, the WoW family blogger, and Pichta, who wrote interesting articles on encounters, left for Daggerfall. My blog statistic, also showed a sharp decline in traffic starting in March. While after the release the blog attracted, sometimes 3,000 visitors per day, by early spring, sometimes it dropped to 1,500. The meager and quickly consumed solo content of the old world and the complete lack of anything new in the endgame meant nothing to do except raids and PvP at the cup. Nothing radically new, something players had already seen in Vanilla, the Burning Crusade, and Wrath of the Lich King. In late May, Blizzard itself acknowledged the decline in audience. Mark Morheim told at shareholders' meetings that compared to pre-cataclysmic figure of 12 million, World of Warcraft audience had declined by 600,000, reaching 11.4 million by the end of spring. A wave of discussion about state of the game swept across many WoW resources. Haters gloated, arguing to join Rift, threatening with lightsabers and guild wars. Whiners lamented the crappiness of Cataclysm and publicly admitted to cancelling their subscriptions. I also tried Rift and it was my third MMO after EverQuest 2. It's not that I abandoned WoW, but I played both games regularly. However, after Path 4.1, I put Rift on a back burner and then I abandoned it altogether. Path 4.1 Rise of the Zandalari. The Path announcement provoked a mixed reaction, which, given the mass exodus, was largely negative. Traditionally, content patches included full-fledged raids, but 4.1 was one of the first patches to lack them. Instead, players received 5-player instances, creatively reworked Vanilla and the Burning Crusade raids, Zul'Gurub and Zul-Aman. True, these raids had long attracted only old-school fans and mount collectors. This primarily concerned Zul'Gurub, where bosses drop mounts, a raptor and a tiger. Therefore, the reformatting was met with hostility, and some players actively expressed dissatisfaction even at the announcement of these changes. After the patch release, the woes about Blizzard laziness were joined by cries about the excessive difficulty of new instances. Firstly, even in a scaled-down version, there were too many bosses for players to handle. In Zul group, for example, there were 9 of them, and trash was still a thing. Over the past couple of expansions, players had become accustomed to compact instances with 3-4 bosses, but now the format of large, lengthy instances in the vein of vanilla had returned. Added to this has the difficulty of Zul's. In the first week it took a group of average players about 2 hours to complete. I still remember our first guild group taking 3 hours. Groups formed through the Finder sometimes couldn't even complete the entire encounter, falling apart on the intermediate bosses. Jinder, the final boss of Zul group, initially thwarted even guild groups. On the one hand, this appealed to challengers who saw it as a right course of action. On the other hand, the silent majority continued to quit the game. Furthermore, the patch brought nothing more than these 2 instances and a short quest chain. Narratively, the path was off track. Deathwing's return, the elemental invasion, the Twilight Hammer cult, it all started out so epic. People were expecting a continuation of the party, with the kidnapped Neptulon and further atrocities by Deathwing and his minions. And then the Zandalari showed up. No one was downplaying the importance of this troll tribe in Azeroth history, but it all felt like some kind of local conflict tacked on the main plot simply because it was necessary to revive the old raids. So ended the sprint of 211. Well, that's it all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for your attention, and to be continued.